I'm very excited to get the conversation going about Gale Force eSports and Roll20. We saw Gale Force, we heard about the changes that they're enacting with from Fan in the winner's interview, specifically moving the shot calling back to Michael Udall. But I have a lot of questions of how things are going to work for Roll20 bringing in Goku. A team that is so intertwined in their drafting specifically as Roll20, seems like they have a very real possibility of getting hit harder by making even just one roster swap, bringing in Goku. And granted, he does share a lot of the same heroes as, say, Glaurung, but how fast are they going to be able to sort of weave him back into the way that they like to draft?
I absolutely have no idea how it's going to impact them, but I think that is a huge focal point for this specific series is going to be how does that actually affect them with the decision making, you know, how lethal is their mentality, how quick they're looking to be able to end some of the games, because Glaurung moving to a different role and learning from a backlines perspective how to try and lead the team, especially one who's we know Glaurung is micro intensive when it comes to shot calling. He goes you here, you there, and that's a very global view of the map. And now when you change your role, your obligations for your team to be successful, suddenly your perspective and your strategies you had before can actually hinder the team more than help it.
Yeah, it seems like Justing and Buds will still be exactly where they were before, but bringing in Goku could cause shockwaves, not only for Goku, but as well as for Prismaticism and Glaurung.
And it takes a lot of trust. I mean, beyond the weirdest thing, the coolest thing, I feel like, when looking at this is the trust onto Goku, because now this is a melee assassin intensive meta. We have transitioned our way into that. And now it's taken Glaurung, who has always been known to be, I'm that guy, I'm going to carry the team. This is a meta where he would normally be at the forefront of the squad. And now it's shifted, they bring on Goku, and there's no way that you put Glaurung in that position instead of Goku. So now it's just blind faith that he can actually fulfill the role for his team, and it may be the most impactful, at least on the current patch.
Well, if there's anyone I would want to put my trust in for that role, it's Goku. His performance in Phase 1 was absolutely amazing. Let's get into this matchup. Roll20 eSports takes on Gale Force eSports.
I feel really good about Phase 2. We're going to be doing a roster swap where we'll have Goku in place of Yoda. And I think our roster is going to be even stronger than before. I think we're really going to shake up the North American scene and be a real contender on an international stage. Our goals as a team this year is to prove that we're the best team in North America, and hopefully the HGC record will show that.
For me, I'm not a super big fan of roster changes. I wasn't really particular in favor of changes on my team. I think stability is really important. However, I do think that a lot of the changes within NA this time might be an exception. I think the teams that did change rosters have a pretty good shot of improving. And like, for example, my team, I think we were strong with Yoda, but I think we can be as strong or stronger with Goku as well. I have a lot of respect for both those players.
I think that match we'll be able to beat them pretty handily. I'm really excited to do it. I always love killing Glaurung. Just, you know, it's fun. He's a fun guy to play against. We always like banter back and forth, so it's gonna be a fun match. I mean, if there is a weak link, ooh, it's super baiting me. And if there's a weak link on the team, it'll probably be Buds.
I think Gale Force is gonna be still like a top team, top 3. So they're probably the next hardest opponent next to Tempo Storm.
The next hardest team next to Tempo Storm, but Roll20 were able to defeat Tempo Storm again at the mid-season brawl. Currently, between Gale Force eSports and Roll20, they are sitting at 2-1 in favor of Roll20 in HGC when you include the playoffs. But I think we've got quite a series on our hands. You know, we talk about Kelly and the predictions that she's given us as our makeup artist.
She's got new ones today?
She feels like it's going to be a 3-2 series, and it's going to be a good one, but the Gale Force will take it.
When Kelly speaks, you know it's law. It's got to happen. Game 5 here. We 100% for our first series. Thank you very much, Kelly, for bringing that back. You know, I came in today with the assumption that I did think this would be like a 3-1 Roll20 is kind of where my projections were going. Maybe giving up a game, but if they carry over that dominant mentality, we talked about it all of week 1 so far, specifically me talking about understanding when you can push your advantage. Roll20 is our best team at being able to do that, and that makes me feel like they're really going to be able to punish Gale Force in this series.
Well, before we continue our conversation about this, because there's some questions about shot calling we need to address with these teams, let's take a look at a tweet from you guys at home. You've been talking to us using the hashtag HGC. Please continue to do so. this, I know this name, Oblivious. So pumped to see Gale Force versus Roll20. HGC Phase 2 has been amazing so far. These games will be sick. I gotta agree. I'm so pumped. We saw Gale Force yesterday. They came in swinging. They looked really good. They obviously feel like there are still some places where they can improve synergy.
Yeah.
But it, at the same time, was kind of like riding a bike for Fan to be back with King Caffeine and K1 Pro. And K1's Li Ming was awesome. But we
Yes.
also know that they're moving Michael Udall back to shot calling. And there was a time when the pressure could get to Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's at this point, it's too consistent to ignore. How I would address that is every time that we have seen this roster kind of have Mike Udall at the forefront, it is always successful until there's too much pressure, and that's when it seems to crumble. And a lot of the times, again, when we talk about Gale Force gets a new roster, there's always so much hype, and then it always never meets up to the hype. That is a variable that is influenced their outcome so far. I hope that they can change it around. The team, they have so many veterans now on the roster, because you got to remember when Mike was leading, and specifically PAX of last year, and we had a tragic, slow played game where they essentially had a huge lead and gave it up due to their lack of aggression. It was with 5 or 4 members that are very young and very new to the hero scene. So maybe having, those 3 veterans and world champions of one time on that roster, it's going to be easier and better, or at least we can be hopeful for that.
Even Mike has so much more experience now in being able to bring that in. He has played under different shot calling. He got some experience in with Equinox too. So I am very hopeful that it will be a new, even more improved shot calling from Michael Udall. But we do anticipate that it will be a little bit of time while he's ramping that up in addition to being back on the melee role. Well, it is time. Let us not waste any more time getting into this series. The first battleground between Gale Force and Roll20, no surprise, Battlefield of Eternity. We have Braxis Holdout again banned versus Gale Force, and Gale Force again banning Dragonshire like yesterday.
Yeah, Roll20 taking us to Battlefield of Eternity is, without a doubt, one of their strongest maps. Infernal Shrines might be the only one you could put above that, purely because so many teams respected their play on it that I'm going to say it's their best map, but we didn't get to see enough games for that to really be shown through. But every time they take us here, they focus a lot onto their macro play. They really like the side soak advantages, and they abuse that. It's just rotations and heavy outplay on the macro sense is where they gain a lead on Battlefield of Eternity, and I expect to see that here. And again, talking about the weak early game of Gale Force and the lack of pushing the advantages, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a quick game in favor of Roll20.
Yeah, see if they can maybe snowball in the way that yesterday Gale Force were not able to, even though they had a level lead right at the 10 mark and getting that Immortal versus Naventek. Gale Force banned Medivh, quick Genji ban from Roll20. We know that Gale Force was drafting very similar to mid-season Brawl meta with their own sort of Gale Force flair. I expect that from both of their teams, both of these teams again.
Yeah.
But of course, same thing for Roll20. They have their own flair too.
Yeah, and we see that, kind of, I'm going to word that as a raw Tassadar pick here for Roll20. A lot of options, again, available. The Tracer, the Vala. We've seen even the Illidan. It's pretty much TAS, old school TAS meta is a thing. Once again here at the HGC North America. And they're going to pick it up very early, but not commit to it. They pick up the Li Ming afterwards, leave up the options, and essentially say, Gale Force, if you want to commit resources, we actually view that as probably a positive.
That Li Ming is a huge question mark for me for Roll20.
Yeah.
I
Who
know
plays
that,
it?
yes, that's the big question mark, because
Yeah.
before that would have been Yoda. Even when Yoda was playing melees, when he would play a second warrior, things would shift when they drafted Li Ming at the mid-season brawl so that Yoda could play her. And play her well, he did. So now, who plays that? Is it Goku? Is this now when we start seeing Glamour? Is this a hero that Prismaticism needs to pick up to fill things in? This is the shockwaves I mentioned.
Yeah. My guess is that's Glorong. Off the top of my head, it will be high impact backliners if he can't do that in the melee role. So one like Li Ming is going to be a great fit for him and his playstyle. But heroes, Prismaticism is an absolute monster on specific mages, even like the
True,
Chromie.
with
So
Chromie.
it goes, maybe we see him transition outward.
And TAS 2, another ex-Yoda character.
It's going to be fun.
The plot thickens.
It does. But Gale Force, they've moved into, the trifecta here. It's got the Arya, they have the Uther, they have the Vala. All on Battlefield of Eternity. Solid racing, solid skirmishing. But it also, it doesn't, again, on big maps, it's not as effective as it is on clearing, pressuring out small front walls, like on maps like Tomb and Dragon.
You know, what's funny to me is that Gale Force having Fan not only is playing a mid-season Brawl-esque style of drafting, but has even shifted toward E-Star specifically, right? Fan
Uh-huh.
has so much respect for E-Star, and it's very cool to see this. I wouldn't be surprised to see Illidan after that too if it doesn't get banned.
Yeah, you know,
And it hasn't.
And everybody, in the interviews with the eStar players, everybody got to experience the fact that Fan is bilingual and, in fact, hung out with eStar a lot behind the scenes. He's good friends with a lot of that roster since the beginning. Even he actually has the official Zhao Ti sweater when he retired at Spring World Championships.
Jealous.
Yeah, that is how close Fan is with some of the members in the Chinese scene. And so, yeah, it is really cool to kind of see a bit of the eStar coming out here from them. It's not enough to commit it and be like, well, they're definitely mimicking it, because it was way too popular a strategy. But it was definitely the East, and specifically eStar, with the Uther variation that was higher priority.
Exactly.
So it's a lot of fun. You know, looking back into the draft and what we've experienced, the Tracer removal, Tassadar on the other side. It's Battlefield of Eternity. That is not surprising. But the Dahaka Arthas rotation here from Roll20, not what I expected from them, but I don't dislike it. It focuses on the macro, which they're so very good at. The Arthas is going to be in deny, and it allows them to transition into the Illidan last pick.
But they need a support.
You're right, actually. Didn't
I
put
know,
that
so
together.
I thought the same thing too,
Yep,
but
I was
like,
oh,
wait.
you're right. Hello?
So
Wait, there's no Tassadar hypercarry,
there's
period.
no Tassadar enabler.
So then Tassadar was that high of a pick, was heavily punished, but
With the Tracer ban?
they volunteered into the Arthas Dahaka, so no.
There were other picks.
There were. They volunteered away from this. They straight up just didn't want to commit to it. The Tassadar, why this is so concerning from me and Gilly's perspective at first is you're like, okay, well, they picked the Tassadar and they avoided it later on. That's totally actually viable on every map but Battlefield of Eternity. The reason why that's a problem on BOE is because if you don't commit with that hypercarry enough, Tassadar's terrible at the race. He's pretty weak when it comes to defending. He just doesn't accent the map objective well, and he doesn't get enough value out of his wave clear and pressuring, again, on anything that is not a small map. So picking that hero and not having a major emphasis into a hypercarry is a bit concerning here from Roll20.
Yeah, that is a strange set of circumstances that Roll20 have gone down on their side of the draft. Gale Force looks very MSB, very Gale Force. They've been playing a lot more Leoric Arthas from the match that we saw yesterday versus Naventic. We've got Michael Udall on that. He can be able to split soak on the lanes. Yes, Roll20 will do that too with a slight advantage in that they have Dahaka as a global. What do you think? What do you like best?
I like Roll20s only because the map, and it meets some of their specific strengths. And again, I'm concerned ignoring the draft completely. I put this game, again, very heavily weighted to Roll20, just because the map and what the map does to the weaknesses of the playstyle of Gale Force eSports, because they struggle in the early game. You put a team whose best map is BOE, they're going to get an early advantage. They're going to be able to snowball, and if they force it hard enough, I don't see that window where it goes, oh, here's where Gale Force come back. I don't think Roll20 is ever going to give that option, even without looking at the draft. So then seeing the Dahaka, a hero that can complement the side soak, I go, you know, Gale Force has a solid, well-rounded draft, but I just still can't put faith behind it.
The damage of Roll20 is concerning in getting that Tassadar, not having a hyper carry behind it. But then you look at Gale Force eSports, and a lot is on Vala's shoulders too, with a double support, double warrior. So let's see how this works out. A slow and steady Battlefield of Eternity for game number 1 between Roll20 and Gale Force eSports.
Well, here it is. Glorong, in fact, is going to be playing the Li Ming. Justing will be the Arthas for Roll20. Goku is going to be playing the Dahaka. Tassadar played by Prismaticism, and we have Buds on Malfurion.
And Gale Force eSports in the red, we saw them beat Naventic 3-1 yesterday. Michael Udall playing Leoric, Fan on his Vala. Stitches, played by King Caffeine. K1 Pro will be flexing over to Ariel, and finally Akaface playing Uther.
Still hard for me to see these names on the same squad and be like, yeah, this is what I expect. Akaface with the members of Cloud9, just something I never thought I would see. All right, so now for the laning, it just looks like it's going to be safe posturing around. Gale Force, we know the trifecta, really good at pressuring out front walls early on. Roll20 is going to just stop the bleeding for the most part. It's all about the race and everything they'll like there. And, you know, to be honest, I do actually remove the names. I like Gale Force's draft, I think, overall better. A lot of it comes down to that Tassadar pick. But again, I gave my reasoning. It's going to be hard for me to put faith here behind Gale Force eSports. I still feel like it's a tall task for them to be able to take out Roll20.
I feel the same about Gale Force eSports draft, but I think that they could do it here. We talk a lot about Roll20, how well they do on Battlefield of Eternity, but Gale Force eSports feels really comfortable here too. And you were talking about seeing all of the names of Gale Force together, but you know, I'm so excited finally to see Goku with Roll20. He was one of the first players to announce leaving the team, and then we just had to lie and wait and try to figure out where he was going, because we knew he's such a good player. He was going to go somewhere, and then to finally see that be Roll20 is just so exciting for me. I have very much enjoyed commentating Goku throughout all of Phase 1, and I'm really excited to see how they do here.
You know, you guys should have seen Gilly. When we learned Goku was away from the roster of superstars, she was just like, where is he going? Where is he going?
I had a chalkboard. I had written everything down.
No.
It was like that GIF.
It was straight up. She had like a world map. There were photos and lines of yarn like strung across. You could barely get across the room. And she concluded, you know, she came up with her conspiracy theory. In fact, she was correct.
Woohoo!
She nailed it. But it was a tough week here for Gilly.
A lot of coffee drank.
Yeah.
A lot of chalk consumed. We've got the Immortals starting to fight for the first race, but as we envisioned, slow and steady for these teams.
Yeah, the stall-out game. The longer, the better for Roll20. I feel like the early game pressure of the Holy Trinity and how impactful they can be into team fights is just so good with that composition. So Gale Force, or excuse me, Roll20, if they can stall it out and not worry about race pressure, again, with a Tassadar comp, that's going to feel really good, just not having the hyper carry.
Yeah, and it's nice the way they've been able to set up with Tahaka in the top. Goku's starting to make his way down, but because their Immortal is easy to defend where Tassadar can quickly go down, clear out the waves, and then come back up. But meanwhile, having Tahaka in the top so that he can be the one to shift in. Whereas for Gale Force, they have Leoric in the bottom, but if they want to be able to come in, they don't have anybody necessarily defending on their Immortal or being even soaking up in the top. So now, knowing that, Roll20 is going to come in with Goku, take some damage, the roots underneath, King Caffeine staying safe, staying alive for now, thanks to that double support.
Nice Howling Blast there, did lock down Calf, but the poke from Glaurung is going to be thrown out, and the members not want to commit too far here, as Mike Udall tries to rebuttal, throwing out the Drain Hope. It's all about the side soak. Again, trying to warn, that's how Roll20 likes to play this map. It's way more about the what can I get and experience other parts of the map while just playing the slow Immortal game. And right now it's working out for them. It's only a minor advantage, not a major one, but again, that is kind of the goal if they don't have to feel pressured into these races with the Tassadar.
Keeping Glaurung, Buds, and Justing to defend once again. Tahaka stalks in. He's deep into the back lines of Gale Force eSports, hoping to catch out Fan. Justing throws out a Howling Blast to see if he can lock people down. Goku feels very comfortable all the way out here. Roots to follow up the drag.
Yeah, look at Justing too. He's trying to get the flank. Mike Udall with a lot of pressure out. He has Wraithwalk available if needed. Buds is on full retreat though. No zoning root's going to be dropped quite yet, but the members of Gale Force are moving up to the Immortal. Justing, he turns around, tries to deny anything. Drain Hope will land, but the root for Buds, it does not share the same fate. It's going to be Gale Force backing out.
I think we should see Roll20 send someone up to the top. That wave's getting pretty big to try to soak that up. Can Gale Force eSports stop that rotation?
Gilly,
Yeah.
I don't mean to alarm you, but this is an Icy Talons.
It's Justing. You think he goes Rune Tap as well?
I think so. I was surprised because we see Tassadar actually going with the armor at 4 rather than the bonus healing. So at first I thought, is this a hyper carry, you know, Icy Talons with like Arthas?
Arthas build? The dream!
It's actually into a CC-less frontline insane what Icy Talons can do because it stacks up to 60% and then every 3 auto attacks can heal you with a Rune Tap, not even counting your passive reset. But they go with the armor instead onto the Tassadar, but this is, you know, into a Stitches Leo makes a lot of sense here for the Icy Talons. I love this adjustment for Justing.
I wonder how far down the auto attack Arthas rabbit
I mean, you
hole
got a
we'll see
Rune
him
Tap.
go.
You got a Rune Tap.
But yeah, but you get Frostborn feeds at 16.
Oh.
I feel like you need the root. The root is just so good, especially versus Stitches.
You know what else is pretty good? Roll20 on Battlefield here.
Yeah.
Look at that Immortal, man. Slowly but surely, they have whittled away at it. And the members of Gale Force just begging to take a team fight. This is all Roll20, understanding the strengths of their opponent's composition, the weaknesses of theirs, and just trying to manipulate the map so they never have to be pressured into unfavorable circumstances. And that will get them here roughly 60% onto the first Immortal and experience dead even.
Exactly right. Gale Force has a brawling composition with that double support. And with Avala to keep Ariel full of energy, Uther to keep Ariel alive. If she becomes the target, it'll be very difficult to be able to beat Gale Force in a full 5v5 engagement. But Roll20 don't necessarily have to do that. And when they do, they can make sure that it's advantageous for them because of their ability to split so constantly throughout those phases.
King Caffeine there. The chain CC was real. Root into stun, but no punishment from the members of Roll20. The shielding still there. Nice Howling Blast. Follow-up root coming out from Buds. Justing and Buds always showing the synergy there from the front line and the supporting. But it looks like at best this is going to be a fort for the side of Roll20. Calf maybe can get a hook play, but Akaface has to be there for the follow-up.
Fort would be fine, but it's going to go down before that stun. They dodge the hook. 16 seconds where they may be able to push back in.
Roll20 looks like they want this. They don't want to give it up yet. Try to predict the vault there on Fan, but in the words of Fan at the midseason brawl, if you're in this type of composition with the Vola and you have to vault backwards, it's not a good vault. Look at Goku though, that flank here, Gilly.
Yeah, the drag, follow-up damage from Glaurung. Roots do not connect in time, but
Howling
the Howling
Blast.
Blast does, dragging back into the fray. K1 Pro getting low. Lights out.
But Justing there, he has the Icy Talons, and he does have the Rune Tap, but it's not enough to keep him up. Tash Shield with the drag for Goku, passive ticking away. He will be able to sustain. Glaurung poking around, begging for a reset here, but Gale Force not going to give it to him. A nice one-for-one skirmish here between these teams.
Rune Tap picked up Dimensional Shift use after the hook. There are some mercenary camps up for grabs, but not a huge level 10 scary advantage potential now for either team.
Yeah, one of those just, oh gosh, not like this Battlefield of Eternity, you know, like I can't stop it. It's going to be even here, and it's nice for Gale Force. You know, that is one thing to commend them, is that they haven't let, though they lost the Immortal, they aren't behind. It's only a fort, which again, those are really easy to sacrifice in a map like BOE. You're way more concerned about, okay, is this a keep? And if it's not going to be, it's all about the experience, and it's just nice to see this coming out from them, especially after yesterday's games where they struggled so hard in the first 10 minutes of almost every single game they played.
Well, we have to remember that Roll20 at the midseason brawl, what kind of style did they show when they played on Brax's Holdout? Gale Force eSports style, the style that they had learned from them. So knowing that these two teams practice versus each other so much, you can postulate that Gale Force eSports knows and understands exactly what Roll20 is going for on this battleground. And picking up the Leoric to make sure that he is able to keep in a side soak 2, come in, and then be able to engage, will be able to keep them in the place where they are, which is very close. Into drag, Goku in trouble, stunned before he can even take a breath.
Yeah, adaptation was popped very early on, but they bursted it before the window of healing is even an option here. So now a member down, Roll20. They're looking to retreat. Fan isolated though. The Twilight Dream whiffs. The damage is almost there, but Divine Shield's gonna be used. This is worst case now for Roll20. Fan had so many resources burned on top of him, but he survives.
Justin still going with his Army of the Dead, trying to stay up in front and push all of Gale Force eSports off the Immortal. They will take out Michael Udall.
Wow.
Goku is back in, goes for the drag, catches, pops Crystal Aegis.
Gale Force still trying to retreat. K1 Pro, he's back into the Immortal now. Cleanse is going to be used on Goku. Drag doesn't land, but the Force Wall splitting out Akaface. He goes down. The heals are going to be there. So the members of Roll20, though they're man up, have to question whether or not they want to move in. Leo is there. He's got the slow. Uther's heals are not there anymore, but again, an entomb on Goku.
Goku this time drops his burrow, gets out in time, thanks to Detainment Strike that I think went out just as Entomb dropped, so he didn't get the stun into the wall, maybe like they were hoping to time. That was taking out Goku onto Haka so he can stalk back in, then taking out Leoric, who's going to be back in. It seemed to be making both teams fairly hesitant to fully get into the engagement, but Glaurung finds another kill on Leoric, giving them a little bit more time for this Immortal phase.
Yeah, Mikey did all there, sacrificing himself once more, giving the experience over to Roll20. But he'll be coming back to life as he's rotating down, getting the scout. He could flank here, so Roll20 has to question their positioning. No, he goes back. He's going to show into the lane, so this is a very safe moment for Roll20 as they get a bit more free poke onto the Immortals. Almost back to even, as they just, you know, it's just a slow overtime damage for Roll20 here. That's how they play Battlefield of Eternity.
Stun, Goku can't, oh man, Goku flanked. Divine Shield has to be used on Stitches. Entomb has also been dropped. Justing though has Army of the Dead to stay healthy.
The members of Roll20 concentrating onto the Immortal. They get the halftime show off. Now Gale Force, they want to force this. They're going to try.
these force walls have been absolutely detrimental to Gale Force eSports. Prismaticism finding his target every single time. Strafe being burned by Fan, hoping to get out the damage necessary to take out Jesting. Twilight Dream this time.
It goes,
the end of Uther.
that goes off before Divine Shield was actually a cooldown usable for Akaface 2. So now with the Aegis there, Caffeine does manage to survive. Leoric will be back, but with so many members dead, Roll20 having all 5 alive, this is going to be a very, very healthy Immortal for them. Gilly, they can even split push actually with this. Roll20 can approach this next Immortal about two to three different ways, and depending on how they choose it, can show their mentality on how long they want this game to last.
A lot of people low on mana gonna go all the way back, even though you have a couple of globes once the Immortal drops.
So
13 gives Ice Block. Go ahead.
I just want to see if Justin is going to look for any kind of a flank or pushing onto this fort. Gale Force has no right defending this fort. Just zero right doing it. And this would be Roll20 trying to punish and hard initiate on top of them.
Hook. Cleanse.
They move up. The minions are looking to join in. The shielding still standing, but a lot of damage moved out there. No Q build for Fan, so he can't lower the shields faster. Army of the Dead is used though, so this should mean Gale Force just full retreat.
There's a catch with the Howling Blast. Hoping for resets. There's another really good force wall.
That Aegis is forced out, even though Guardian of the Ancient King was a usable thing there with the shield and Divine Shield. Double support heroics, purely just to defend. Roll20 walks away knowing just off of those resources alone was a very big win there.
And getting those heroic abilities, not even needing to pressure further, instead getting into position so that they can immediately start getting a win on the mercenary camps. Even having Goku down at the bottom, so a double win there.
This is so nice to see from Roll20. Just the lack of hesitation when it came to that. They were like, are we going to push this keep front wall? They said no. Well, the minute that an Immortal is dead, you see them applying pressure onto one camp and to another. They question whether or not they want to get an invade into the Shamans. It's just the lack of hesitation here from Roll20 is very, very nice to see. And if they keep this up, again, I don't know if Gale Force is going to get the same window that other teams have given them.
This is a point where they could maybe look for a fight. They found Glaurung, who teleports over a wall, thanks to the range from Illusionist. Goku's come back in, so Roll20 are willing to take this fight.
Yeah, they're going to try and force it there. Udal has a bit of poke onto him. He's still got Wraith walk away. Howling Blast landing onto 2. Follow-up route from Buds. Twilight Dream is there, but nobody's going too low. This is just fine, but the drag forcing the Aegis onto Fan. Goku, it's like a homing missile. This guy does not miss, and now Glaurung is looking for those resets. Gale Force has to walk away.
They are not going to be allowed to do that, though, with Justing on the back line, slowing everybody on the retreat. That is the perfect fight. Dahaka coming in, getting the homing missile drag on Fan of all people after the Aegis, being able to get into position, Glaurung timing out his abilities to burst down Vala before any more heals can be had. And with that, those kills, Roll20 getting 16, they'll take out the keep wall, open that up for a further push.
And so now Gale Force eSports is just going to be, how many deaths do they lose onto this Immortal race? How long can they stall out the next Immortal, or do they forfeit too much over? But look at Goku. The Fan drag is just so ridiculous. He goes to the shrub to make sure that he gets the movement speed, and then he just goes ahead, drop it down, getting the auto attack resets. And that single-handedly set what was a good fight to, we are winning this. Just because, again, the new member of Roll20, Goku,
Always leading those drags.
making a name for himself
Even
already.
Stopping the strafe to do so, too. All right, 16 to 13. This is a rough spot for Gale Force to be in, but the Immortal spawn locations.
Yeah, the first Immortal spawn was about as good as it gets for them.
Yes.
They got free damage in. Now it's going to be, because it's vertical, there is no major advantage unless you were dominating one of the 2 lanes. Neither is true here for Gale Force. Nice force wall. Once again, Cap in a bad spot. Has to drop the Putrid Bile. Goku got a drag. Not enough auto attacks to get the full reset, though. K1 Pro, you see down below, trying to retreat out with Fan, as Justing's just getting a continuous slow.
Yeah, there's Justing on one side of this and Goku on the other, and the minute, again, that Roll20 forced something to be used, in this case, it was Divine Shield after that, they're like, okay, well, we've won that. We don't need to do anything else. Now we can get the Immortal. There is nothing that Gale Force can do to stop us.
Another really awesome thing to note there from Roll20 and how they approach that fight is Gale Force eSports. Hold on, they're going to try and force this. They're down 16. This is desperation. They are just begging to win this, and if they do, maybe they have a shot in this game. Roll20 doesn't even want to deal with it here. No hook is going to be thrown out. I was going to say how they approach the fight, splitting up the members of Gale Force eSports. Normally, that isn't always a good thing, but against a comp where they're relying on the battery and the AoE healing out of the Ariel and then the cross-supporting of Uther, anytime they aren't stacked as a minimum 3-man group, their team fight is just non-existent. And you saw the split there, K1 Pro on the Ariel, having fans split. Justin was just like, well, now you have no team fight with your other 3, and the members of Roll20 made it easy work.
I feel like Roll20 has always been really good at judging when they need to do things like that. Even thinking back to when they played Infernal Shrines versus Aventic and saying, we didn't have a better 5v5, but we had a better 4v4. And so I needed to keep Greymane away. But again, the force walls have been, it feels like something that Gale Force just cannot figure out even too. King Caffeine goes in, or even Leoric, and the force wall drops behind them, and they take so much free damage that even in some cases, one of the supports have to burn something like an Aegis, or worst case, the Divine Shield.
Yeah, it's a strategy that we saw not every team, it was definitely not agreed on from all regions of the world, and when you go Archon and when you go Force Wall, but I personally feel anytime we see a weak frontline that doesn't have high mobility, like a Stitches, and even better when you have 2 of them, like the Leoric. Yeah, he has Wraith Walk, but if he's burning that just on a Force Wall, again, that is a nice win. So it's into a Warriors like this because we've seen the fallout of things like the Murden, like the Tyrael, and the ETC, who all can get away from it. Suddenly, Force Wall is almost more damage than it feels like the Archon would produce just purely off of its isolation potential.
Roll20 now having all the answers for the team fight composition of Gale Force here on Battlefield of Eternity, but Gale Force losing a keep. They are down, but they now have their 16 talent tiers. Questioning between likely Manticore or Frost Shot for Vala. No Will or Wrath of Heaven, though. In this case, Reservoir of Hope for Ariel. So wanting to make sure that you have that big Hope reservoir where you have a lot more big bursty heals.
I can see the argument of going to Manticore into the Arthas and the Dahaka. Both are pretty reasonable targets to get multiple auto attacks into, but I feel like Frost Shots is going to help Gale Force more. They want to make sure Roll20 can't retreat on every fight they want to walk away from. They want to make sure that they can get the slow, stalled out fight, and Arthas is essentially dictating every fight for them. What ones they can and cannot get, and that alone makes me want to see the Frost Shot, but they decide otherwise. They go for the Manticore and the pressure onto the front line.
Well, theoretically, shouldn't Slam Build, Putrid Bile, and Leoric provide enough slows, or is it just still not enough?
In theory, the Putrid Bile, the Stitches, yes, but I don't think Leoric on his own provides enough unless he's already dead. Look at this damage. Look at the members of Gale Force. They already don't want to fight. K1 Pro's found himself kind of on an island. He uses all his hope. He survives. There's the AoE supporting, but look, it's just not even close here.
No, Gale Force at least want to disengage until those ghouls are down, and then maybe Arthas can be more of a target, but how does he do this?
Every time, man. Goku, I said it. The homing missile that feels like it is his drag sets up the kill, gets rid of Vala, and that is the core of the composition for Gale Force. They need their battery, otherwise they have nothing. That's going to allow the members of Roll20 to move on to this Immortal.
Buzz is low on mana, he's going to back.
They're just setting it right below the 50% mark and then wait it out, back, and then force it whenever they feel comfortable taking the fight. Smart, slow play, as usual here, coming out from Roll20 on Battlefield.
Especially when 20 is on the horizon for them for this potential final push. That bottom keep already has sustained some damage. The top is gone. Someone has to go back to even deal with that. It'll be Vala when she respawns. Things looking good for Roll20 to take game number 1.
King Caffeine burns a bile this very early on. So it's one of those situations where you can understand the use of the bile just because they're like, we want this fight, but not all the members of Gale Force are there. They definitely are looking to force. It's one of those where you can see the desperation. Their mentality is, we need this, but not everybody is there, and they're mistiming the uses. So now it's just, how do they, win this next fight? They're down one of the cooldowns, and they haven't been winning the team fights before when it was up in the past. And now Roll20 goes, okay, we'll wait this out. We still have pressure onto the map with the global. The Dahaka value coming in, but Udal is looking to force Akaface join.
Gives an Entomb, but the location was so weird for Gale Force to go around from the side, and now Akaface has to Divine Shield himself. Detainment Strike throws Justing back away, but Goku's still there, and he's looking for that homing missile if he can get the right drag.
Yeah, you see Fan putting a lot of damage into Justing now with that Manticore. It was definitely gaining value there, but look at Udal up in the front. The Bolt, the Dream, Aegis is timed well, but that is going to be one reset now for Glarong. Hook lands onto Prismaticism, but it's merely peeling. Look at the lasers.
3,
They're just
4.
going off, baby. And now the Force Wall looks like it seals the deal. That is a 5-for-0 wipe.
Force Wall catching King Caffeine. There's nowhere to run, King Caffeine. That's a force barrier. There's walls everywhere.
And the Glarong not wasting any time going into Archon mode. I'm a firing my laser. That's 100-0. Roll20. Confident game here, #1, and is going to take a lead over Gale Force eSports.
16 kills to 2. Roll20 says, yep, we made a roster swap, but it was the right call because Goku does not miss drags.
He absolutely does not. Had a lot of macro pressure, too, with the double camp, never getting caught out. That was my biggest concern when seeing him move over, is just because Roll20, their Dahaka play, when they get caught out, it just their entire strategy falls apart. But whenever they had consistent players go to that hero and they could play around it, suddenly you're like, how do we stop their macro? They are way too good at manipulating the map. And game #1, Goku put on a clinic. I pressure. When you need me in the fight, I'm going to join. And every single time he threw down a drag, you're like, that's either getting a kill or their supports are freaking out.
I feel like when we look at the play in North America in general throughout this weekend, and we consider Dahaka specifically, you can tell the confidence of a player who has been playing Dahaka for a long time solely based on the stock locations too.
Yeah.
The stock locations, when they are in the back line, not in so far as that you're going to be in a lot of danger, but understanding how much pressure you can take and still be able to come in, surprise somebody with a drag the way Goku was doing, it was an awesome game for him.
It was. It was nice to see that, you know, especially when hearing the interview from Glong and going like, I respect both these players, but I'm into stability within a roster. Totally understandable too. I mean, especially when you're dominating, like you're sitting at the top of the region, you don't go like, why do we try and fix something that isn't broke? So I can totally understand that. But when you see game #1 out of Goku, where it's just making plays left and right, and it looks like it's working that fast, it's gotta feel good for those guys.
Gale Force eSports, unfortunately, has lost game #1, but it was Battlefield of Eternity, where you can expect Roll20 to have the edge, definitely. Yeah. Now, likely, though, they're going to pick first pick, which means it's very possible they now have to go up against Roll20 on Infernal Shrines.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested.